You know this this is one of those questions that sounds simple at first until you say it out loud at family dinner. Because the moment you ask it, the room changes. Not because anyone is cruel, not because anyone is selfish, but because everyone is quietly counting something: feelings, history, money, time, and expectations that were never spoken. Tonight I don't want to tell anyone what they should do. I want to talk about what people actually feel and why this question keeps coming up. Let's start here. Families used to be simpler on paper, not necessarily healthier, just simpler. You had grandparents, you had grandkids. There was a line. Now families blend, they stack, they overlap. There are step grandkids, half siblings, kids who came into your life at 5 or 12 or 17. And suddenly a vacation which is supposed to be fun turns into a referendum on love. Here's the unspoken question underneath the question. If we don't take them, what does that say about how much we care? And the counter question, just as quiet. If we do take them, what does that say about what we're allowed to feel? That's the tension. A lot of grandparents will tell you privately, I love all the kids, of course I do. But love isn't one single thing. Love is layered. There's love built from infancy, from scraped knees, from babysitting, from years of Christmas mornings, and then there's love built later, which is real but different. Not lesser, different. And people are afraid to say that out loud now. Here's where things get uncomfortable. Vacations cost money, they cost energy, they cost patience. And grandparents are older. They don't travel the way they used to. They don't have endless stamina, they don't have unlimited budgets. So when they plan a trip, they're not just planning joy, they're managing limits. Physical limits, emotional limits, financial limits. And nobody likes admitting limits. Now imagine this scenario. A grandparent plans a trip with the grandkids, quote unquote, the ones they've always traveled with, but the ones they know how to handle, the ones whose routines they understand, and suddenly someone asks, so are you taking all the kids? That question lands heavy because it's not really a question, it's a test. And here's where resentment quietly forms. On one side, if you don't take them, you're excluding them. On the other, if I'm forced to take them, I'm allowed to be honest about what I can handle. Nobody wants to be the bad guy, but someone always ends up feeling like one. Let's talk about obligation. Are grandparents obligated to take step-grandkids on vacation? Legally, no. Financially, no. Emotionally, that's where it gets murky, because obligation and generosity are not the same thing, and when generosity turns into obligation, it stops feeling generous. There's another layer people avoid saying out loud. Some grandkids don't know grandparents well yet. They may be shy or loud or struggling emotionally or acting out, not because they're bad kids, but because blending families is hard. A vacation amplifies everything, and some grandparents quietly worry, what if this goes badly and damages the relationship instead of helping it? That fear is real. Now let's flip perspectives. From the child's side, a step-grandchild sees cousins going on a trip. They hear the stories, they see the photos, and they don't understand logistics or history or finances. They just feel left out. That feeling matters, but feelings don't automatically dictate solutions. Here's the part nobody likes. Fairness is not the same as sameness. Treating everyone identically can sometimes create more tension than treating people appropriately. And families struggle with that distinction because identical feels safer if it feels defensible, even when it doesn't feel true. Some grandparents solve this quietly. They say this trip is just for the kids we've always traveled with, and later we'll plan something different, something smaller with the others. Different doesn't mean lesser, but explaining that takes maturity and trust and patience. Not every family has those things yet. There's also timing. A step-grandchild who joined the family at 16 is not in the same place as one who joined at 2. That doesn't mean It doesn't mean one is loved more. It means relationships take time, and vacations are not always the best place to build brand new bonds. Sometimes there were cracks. Sometimes there were cracks show fastest. What I notice watching families wrestle with this is this. Most grandparents are not trying to exclude anyone, they're trying to preserve peace, including their own. And most parents aren't trying to guilt anyone, they're trying to protect their children from feeling second class. Both motivations are understandable, both can clash. So maybe the real question isn't, are grandparents obligated? Maybe the real question is, how much honesty can this family tolerate without turning into a moral fight? Because when people can talk honestly, calmly, solutions usually appear. When they can't, vacations become battlegrounds. Sometimes the answer really is, this trip isn't the right one, and that's not rejection, that's realism. And sometimes the answer is, let's try something shorter, closer, lower pressure, because inclusion doesn't have to be all or nothing. What I've learned is this: families do not fall apart because of vacations, they fall apart because of unspoken expectations. The stories people tell themselves when expectations aren't met. So if you're a grandparent listening, it's okay to acknowledge your limits, and if you're a parent listening, it's okay to protect your child's feelings without demanding identical treatment. And if you're someone in between, you're not crazy for feeling conflicted. This isn't about right or wrong. It's about timing, capacity, and recognizing that love doesn't always look symmetrical. Sometimes it looks negotiated, quietly, imperfectly, humanely. And maybe that's the real family skill we're all still learning. Now, how to make everything equal, but how to keep relationships intact while admitting what we can and cannot carry.